Hello everyone. This is the after action review for my first ever customization. This started out as a Venom figure, but now as you can see, it is an absolute Carnage figure. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before I get into that, briefly, I want to let you know about my upcoming project, which is the Scream figure you see right there. That is the one. So if you're interested in Scream, if you like that character, make sure you stay tuned to the channel. Come back and check it out. Show the channel some love. I will be working on that figure next. All right, now as for Carnage, I said I was gonna stop apologizing for my background, folks. I know it's messy and unorganized, but don't expect an apology. That's just how I roll. That's how it is. All right, now about this figure right here. I want to talk about what I did, what I could have done better, and point out some of the mistakes and some of the good things about this project. First, let's start off with the base. Hold on, one thing first. I'm calling this complete, but it is not finished. I still have to spray the gloss on it. Hold on, I'll be back. I said gloss, but this is what I meant right here, this stuff. So I have to spray it with that. And I think what that does, it seals the paint and keeps it from being damaged. So I'll be doing that. Also, now back to the base. Like I said, I'm calling this statue complete. However, I will be repainting the statue I will be repainting the base at some point in the future. Once I find this video on YouTube that shows how to paint these. This entire statue was gray when I started. Now what I did was I painted the brick on there at the bottom. The gray part, that is paint. And I also added some kind of an orange yellow color to it to make it look old. And the red, that is the symbiote. I know most of the time it's black, but I wanted to change things up a little, so I made it red. Now let's move on up to the figure itself. Let me see, where do I start? Okay, let's start down here. Now what I did, okay, let's go out a little bit. Okay, when I got this figure, where's my pointer? Man, these pointers. I'll be back. When I got this figure, it did not have the tendrils. It did not have the absolute symbol. And it did not have the claws. Where are your claws? It did not have the claws. So all of those items I added to the figure. Now, what I did to it was I applied the red. This red is actually a paint / primer 2-in-1. So I did that. I came behind it and applied the veins. I believe these are veins. Okay, now like I said, this was a Venom figure. On Venom, I'm not sure if this stuff is veins or if it's the actual symbiote, but just for this video, for the sake of this, I'm going to call them veins because they're really thin. So I painted the veins black, and that was a tedious task, I must admit, because those things are really, they're tiny, they're thin, and I don't really have a steady hand, so it took a lot of patience and a lot of time to get those painted. Okay, now the figure on the back, the spider on the back of the figure, I don't believe that in the comics there is a spider on the back of Absolute Carnage, the Absolute Carnage character, but I did take a little artistic license, and I figured that the white on the back of this red would be a good contrast, as you can see. So I decided to leave the spider on the back. And let's talk about the spider on the front. Okay, you know what? I won't talk about that now. I'll come back and talk about that when I look at what I did wrong and possibly how I can avoid it in the future. And by the way, folks, this AAR, this after action review, this is just to, basically it's for myself, so I can look at what I did wrong, what I did right, and how I can improve on it for the next project. Because that's all I'm doing with these statues is I'm practicing, trying to practice painting, practice repair, that type of stuff. So that's basically all this video is for. Let's see. Okay. By the way, on this statue, I did apply or use a couple of techniques I haven't used before. One of those was the paint. There's a, you can't tell, but this paint, some of the yellow paint is, what they call it? It's not glow in the dark. They call it something, I think neon. It's right back there. But anyway, under a blue light, under a black light, this yellow will glow. So maybe one day I can get a black light and show you that and see if it actually works. So this was my first time using glow paint. Really curious to see how it's going to look under a black light myself. Also, the slime on his tongue, that is a combination of glow paint and some green regular paint. And I think that's about it. That covers everything. Hold on. No, I'm overlooking something. A lot of stuff here. Okay, quickly, on his feet, I wanted to do something different with the bottom of his feet. So that's why you see the little black patches on his feet. Now, these claws, I wanted to put something down here on his hands. I started with some claws on his fingers, but the right hand, that thumb, I added a claw to it, but because of the way it's designed or made, once you set it on the base, it broke the claw off. So I said, that's not going to work. I did leave one claw on the left thumb, but I wanted something else down here on the hand. So I added these two claws right here, these Wolverine claws. And you can't see it, but there's a thin piece of wire wrapped around each one, and that is for support in case they get damaged or broken. Hopefully the wire will hold it together. Let's see. And by the way, these tendrils are not permanently attached. I drill small holes into this to attach those. And let's talk about the symbol. The symbol is made of epoxy. I was going to paint it on, but I figured it would look a little bit better if I just use epoxy on there instead. So that's what that is. And I am going to stop him. Alrighty. Okay, I think that's about it. Now let's talk about what some of the things let's talk about some of the problems or issues I had. Let me see. I did apply a wash to this. I think that's what it's called. Is it called a wash or shading? I get them mixed up. But anyway, the process of putting some black paint on the figure and then wiping it down so that the black paint stays in the crevices and the cracks, and it shows a little definition to the figure. So I did that to the figure. All right, let's get up here to the problem areas. Here, this arm did not go all the way up to meet the shoulder. There was a gap right here. I don't know if you can see it here, but I did apply some epoxy to fill this gap. And I had two choices, either use epoxy or I could have raised the arm up. But if I raised the arm up, I don't think it would have reached all the way to the base. So I decided to use the epoxy. But in the future, I'm not sure if I want to use the epoxy because I'm not that good working with it yet. So it left this seams right here, and I tried to cover it up with black paint, and I just don't like it. As I do more and more of these, I want to get better, and I don't want the seams to be obvious. So maybe next time I'll just maybe file down some of this, push it all the way up to close the gap, and then see how that works instead of just going straight to the epoxy. Let me see. What else? All right. Things I've learned. I am going to start doing like a little design type thing or a plan for each figure I do before I start on it. Because originally I was just going to make this a regular old Carnage figure, not an absolute Carnage. And so I started sanding down the spider on the front. You can't tell now, but it was raised, but I sanded it down, and then I decided to make it an absolute Carnage figure. So after that, I had to try to build it back up using epoxy, and it didn't turn out that well. And I don't want to repeat that mistake on the next figure, so I'm going to come up with some plans before I get started to know exactly what I want to do with it. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking about redoing this one right here because that's kind of pissing me off, the fact that I messed that up. It just irks me a lot. Okay, let me see. Let's talk about and the neck. The same thing I said about the shoulder arm situation here, that applies to the neck here. I don't know if you can tell. I think I did a better job on the head than I did on the arm. Unless you're really looking hard, you won't see it. I also used some paint to try to cover up the seam where the head connects to the neck. All right, now I'm going to try to do this without messing anything up. If it doesn't work, I'm going to stop. And I said I employed two new techniques with this figure. One was the glow paint and the other one was statues. This is my first time using, I'm sorry, I said statues. I meant magnets. This was my first time using magnets. And as you can see, there's one magnet here, one magnet there, and it turned out pretty good. Surprisingly, I did better than I thought I would do with that. I was afraid I was going to mess something up. But it did take a lot of patience, a lot of measuring to try to get the magnets the right depth and the right distance so that when the head was put on, it was no gap right there. I like the magnets. I'm going to work with them in the future. Let me see. Speaking of magnets, I think my biggest magnet project I got coming up real soon is going to be, and I don't want to take away from this figure right here, but it's going to be this Flash figure. If you are a Flash fan, make sure you stay tuned, hit the bell, subscribe if you're inclined to do so, and watch this project. I have to make a small repair on the figure, and the magnets, I think there's magnets on his feet with a piece of metal in the base, and it's a really weak magnet. So I will be installing these magnets and replacing that little ear, I don't know what you call it, but on his mask, he got the little flash things on the side by his ears. One of those broken. I have to fabricate one and repair that. And this will be a prize in some contest or other in the future. So make sure you stay tuned for that. All right, back to this. So I think that's about it, folks. That about wraps up everything I wanted to talk about. It turned out surprisingly well, I must admit. And I like the way it turned out. There are some issues, some things I don't like, but overall I like the way it turned out. Okay, and that's going to conclude this AAR. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the channel. Trying to get that thumbnail shot. I think that's it right there, folks. I think that's going to be the one. Okay, thanks again. Bye.